Everyone, thank you so much for having me. I won't be here too long. The rest of my colleagues and I will be at the back table, swagged out with all the green. Please come find us if you want to chat and learn a little bit more about what the organization does. Thank you so much, Brother Ali, and everyone here for all of your support for the last 10 nights that we've shown up. We really appreciate all of your support, and especially the people in Gaza. Really thank you for your support. We hear from them all the time, and our donations are reaching them. So I'm going to invite my colleague Nabil here. He's our COO. He spent nearly a decade managing the international programs all over the world. And so he's going to tell you a little bit about IDRF's 30-year history in Palestine and our 9-month grueling work that is really about making sure that we don't give up on the people of Gaza. So please join me in welcoming him.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you all so much for having me. As mentioned, my name is Nabil Ali, and I have the honor of serving as IDRF's Chief Operating Officer. And again, thank you for having IDRF, for hosting us, for allowing us to be the charity to, of course, take your dollars and try to make a good impact with it, but of course also being here with us in dialogue and conversation during such challenging and tribulating times as we think about our brothers and our sisters in Gaza at the moment. So the presentation that I'm going to walk you through today is really going to be around who we are as IDRF, the work we do as an organization, how we're currently making an impact in Gaza, how we can try to maximize the donations you give. And I really want today to really be around how we can actually amplify that organizations are doing good work. There is suffering happening. There are children dying every day. Just this afternoon, we got a report of over 23 children who've passed away through a bombing at a school. So there's children that are passing away on a daily basis. There's suffering happening on a daily basis. But there are organizations that can do something, and there are organizations that are doing good work, be it IDRF or other organizations on the ground. And we really want this to also be an opportunity for you to share that. Share that with people within your circles, with your family, with your friends. Let them know the good work that organizations are doing, because currently there's a huge challenge that we're up against, right? We're looking at the fact that there are millions of people in need, and oftentimes people think there isn't a way to support those who are in Gaza. And that leads to a lot of people within our community, within our broader Muslim community, not doing anything. And those who have an opportunity to do something don't really understand how they can do something. So let's use that as an opportunity to also share what we're doing. So to start, for those who aren't familiar with IDRF and are for the first time are learning about our organization, the work that we do, IDRF stands for the International Development and Relief Foundation. Prior to our name becoming the International Development and Relief Foundation, we were known as the International Development and Refugee Foundation. And we were an organization that was founded in 1984 in response to a huge humanitarian crisis that happened in the 80s in Ethiopia and Somalia. At the time, there was a really bad famine, there were severe droughts, and there were millions and millions of people across those countries that were in severe need. Our organization at the time was built around bringing people from East Africa to Canada. It was a refugee sponsorship kind of organization. Since then, however, the world hasn't gotten any better. Today, there are more people in need than ever before. There's less water that people are drinking. There's less food that people are eating. There's more people that are refugees than ever before. The average person is displaced for now over 20 years. So with that said, our organization had to transform itself, and we became the International Development and Relief Foundation. And what we are as an organization is we're founded on the Islamic principles of human dignity, self-reliance, and social justice. So wherever we are in the world, no matter who's in need, our organization's goal is to get there, provide as much support immediately as possible, and then connect those to some more long-term sustainable development work. The way we do our work as IDRF, which is a little interesting, we actually don't send staff from Canada to another country, or if there's a floods be it in Pakistan or famine in East Africa or any other challenge around the world. We actually don't send staff to any of these countries, open up offices, paint our office green. We don't do a lot of those things. What we actually do is we hire local organizations and local agencies that are on the ground in any country in which we work in. And that's what we believe in. It's called our localization model. And that model allows us to actually maximize the work that we're doing. It reduces our overhead costs and it ensures that we help as many people as possible. So no matter the country, be it Libya, which is going through its severe challenges during its floods, our local organizations that are there. Or if it's Morocco, after the earthquake, we did the same thing. In Turkey, the same thing. And that does not make any differences in Gaza. We're working with local organizations on the ground. How we do that is we vet these organizations, we take a look at who they are, we review their leadership team and the way that organization is structured, and then we support them through financial assistance, and we provide oversight and guidance to these organizations. And then they do the good work, because those who are on the ground in their communities know what the challenges of those communities are, and that allows them to maximize the work. The challenge they have oftentimes is they don't have the financial resources or the ability to carry out the good work that they like to do. And that's where we come in as an organization, and we partner in that way to ensure that we maximize our work. So across all the countries in which we work, all the millions of people that we help, we do it all through localization. At any given time, IDRF has about 60 to 70 different partners around the world, and we operate over 100 projects across 40 countries. So it just gives you an understanding of how wide our network is through our localization model. Where we do our work is we do our work in a variety of different sectors. So be it in our area of food assistance, where that oftentimes is in the areas of hot meals, food vouchers, food parcels. Food assistance is a key thing. We don't really focus on food security so much, we focus on food assistance, because our food isn't just about giving people something to eat in that moment. We look at it from a broader perspective. We look at the fact that, hey, food is connected to farming, so how do you ensure that people have some level of sustainability around that food? How do you ensure people have buying power around that food because there are different dietary needs? We do work in the areas of education, in clean water, and economic development, and emergency response. So these are all areas in which we do a lot of work. Healthcare is another one. But what makes our work really important is something in the middle here that you see, which is called our 4 Rs, right? What essentially that is that that's our ability to respond when there's a crisis, to ensure that we're there, helping people that are in need during their times of need. And then we help communities rebuild and ensure that that's really around whether it's helping people get their homes back together or helping people with some level of basic stability, and we provide that service, helping people go through that area of recovery that oftentimes has to deal with people getting jobs and helping them get back on their feet, and then going through resilience, because a lot of these communities we work in, be it South Asia, be it across Africa, be it in the Middle East, they have to have a higher level of resilience. And what we're getting at when we say resilience, we're talking about their ability to continue to adapt to climate change as the world continues to get hotter and more humanitarian crises are on the rise. Their ability to adapt to changing governments and changing needs on the ground. Their ability to adapt to the fact that the markets may be changing. So you have to have a heightened level of resilience in order for you to kind of work within us. And that's how we as an organization have been partnering with organizations. Our work in Gaza, and of course Palestine overall, expands many years. So we work across all of the different major sectors. So whether it's the emergency response area, where we've been providing services on the ground at any given moment, and that's work that we've been doing. And prior to this crisis, prior to October, IDRF was actually spending the most amount of its charitable dollars and its charitable money around the world in Gaza. Gaza was always the area in which we spent the most amount of our dollars. It was also the area in which we made our biggest impact, because the need there have always been so great, and our donors have always had an expectation of us to ensure that we were doing that work there. So this just gives you a quick visual of all the different sectors in which we've worked. So prior to October, we built over 25 water wells across the Gaza Strip. We used to operate over 30 schools, helping tens of thousands of students on a daily basis have access to education. We used to train doctors across the board. We've established oxygen plants, right? So there's a lot of work that we used to do, and we were known as an organization doing this a high number of impacts and a high number of work. So that allows us today to maximize the work that we're doing, and that allows us today to have unparalleled access that many other organizations may be having challenges with. So our timeline in Palestine actually started in 1994, but throughout this, since October to date, we've been meeting with people across this country, be it across the GTA, all across Western Canada. And I was in a meeting actually a couple of months ago in Calgary, and I met someone and I showed him, I was like, hey, we've been working in Palestine since 1994, and he's like, no, that's actually not true. He showed me a document, and he showed us that we as IDRF were working there in like 1986, 1987. So our work has actually been quite significant all across Palestine for many years. So we started our work really trying to focus on the emergency needs, be it all the war challenges that are happening in the West Bank, where our organization has done not only work at this moment, we've had staff fly over to the West Bank where our CEO was there not too long ago. We continue to provide clean water and food across the West Bank. So that has always been a strategic space where we as IDF provide services. Throughout Ramadan, we were providing iftar meals at Masjid Al-Aqsa. So that has always been a key area for us. And then continuing into Gaza, we've done a lot of work. What we've done also is we've actually hired a local staff member. That's how big our work is there. That we have a staff member that is there on the ground for us to help coordinate all of our services across our local partners that are there at any given time. Our work also expands to additional services. I mentioned a little earlier some of the healthcare services that we are doing, whether that's supporting us establish an ICU unit at the height of the pandemic. Similar to the challenges that were happening here, ICU units over there in Gaza were at capacity. They didn't have ventilators, they didn't have oxygen, they were dependent on oxygen tubes. As an organization, we actually established an oxygen plant at 2 of the major hospitals, one of them being the Al-Shifa Hospital, which has been in the news over the last few months. So our work has been quite significant over the last few years. And now I want to really get into what it is that we're doing on the ground. But how we do our work is around, we first respond through emergency services. So today, we know that children are in need of food. We know there's a need for clean drinking water. We know that there's a need for shelter. We know there's a need for healthcare services. So our focus right now is in the emergency response phase. Once we finish our emergency response phase, and inshallah we will get there, we then connect everything to our long-term sustainable development programming. So essentially that is what connects us together. So whether we're giving out food baskets and food in parcels or we're giving out hot meals, eventually we want to connect people to the ability to purchase the food that they need, getting food through vouchers or actually allowing them to kind of procure the food that they'd like through their own sustainability. And that's how we do work as an organization. We connect not only the humanitarian work, but also our long-term sustainable development. So we operate what we call our sustainable development humanitarian nexus that ensures that we work within these two spaces to maximize the impact that we're doing. I mentioned this a little earlier, which is around our 4 Rs. What you see here in front of you is the food security slide, right? Within our food security, there are 4 key pillars of our work. You have our hot meals, which is one of the key things that we do. We have our food parcels, which is our second key area of work. Our meals that we've been providing at Masjid Al-Aqsa, and then also our fresh food parcels. So when it comes to that, the way that we've been navigating our food programming has been multifaceted. On one end, we've been supporting farmers for many years. The way that we support farmers at IDRF is, prior to this crisis starting in October, every year we would identify 100 farmers that are in need, anywhere in the Gaza Strip, primarily those living in the Rafah area. We would rehabilitate their land, we'd give them irrigation skills, we'd give them new tools, and then we'd actually allow them to start growing their business as farmers. Once they grow their first produce and their first harvest, we would then purchase that from them in Ramadan and use that as a fitra distribution. And that was a cycle that we would do every year. It was a program not only helping them from a sustainable perspective, but it also helped them earn income on the spot and also giving food out to people. So it was a full cycle program that made a big impact. That today is one of those programs that are paying dividends. In this very day, through the challenges in Gaza, we are still getting some produce from those who are in need, that are on the ground, and we're giving out those fresh food parcels. The other thing that we're doing is hot meals. On a daily basis, we are giving out 6,000 hot meals to anyone that is in need across the Gaza Strip. Those hot meals contain rice, they contain chicken, some protein, and some carbs for people, and that is distributed to everyone across the Gaza Strip that we can reach. We also then do distributions of fresh food parcels, which is given out to people as well. And those fresh foods include some of the different tomatoes and vegetables and fruits, and we do a distribution of that. And then the staples of the non-perishable foods that are canned meats, things of that nature that were brought in through the Egyptian border point are then the things that we like to do. So here's a photo. It just gives you a quick illustration of what it looks like that we're doing on the ground now, right? So this is some photos of our hot meals. Our hot meals are actually distributed in a very unique way. So our hot meals are done in partnership with a local organization, World Central Kitchen, and some of our local partners. We establish our hot meals out in the open. There's no way in which we can cook our hot meals or have our hot meals done in a facility and in a space that's a closed environment. We've tried that, and the facility that we actually had was bombed. So we had to move towards having all of our hot meals be cooked out in the open. That ensures that our staff can have their hot meals being cooked, and then we can move it, and it's a little more mobile. We've set up different places where we do our hot meal distribution. So we have a setup up in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, in the middle area of the Gaza Strip, and then we also have our distribution points in the southern part. Throughout the Rafah invasion and all of those challenges, we continue to provide our hot meals to anyone who needed it, and that is that setup. So that's what you see here in the photos there. And the photo on the left is a young boy who also then got some of the fresh food that we give out. So that includes things like tomatoes, potatoes, cucumbers, all things that are all locally grown, and those are distributed. And they use that to make things such as salad. They use that at times to make things such as tomato paste, etc. And then they eat that with some of the bread that is brought in through the flour that we as IDF bring in through the Egyptian border point. Again, some additional illustrations that you see here. It just goes to show you how we do some of our distributions. So you see the car up there in the top left. That car is loaded up. We would like to use a truck. The challenge is we were not always able to use a truck because a truck is a large-scale target, so we try to ensure that we're not risking our staff and our team at any time, so we use a smaller car where we load that up with the food and then we do distributions that way. Many other organizations have lost staff, have lost the food that they were giving out because they've been targeted and they've been bombed, and a lot of this stuff is very intentional to ensure that people aren't getting something to eat or anything to drink. So when we do our distributions, we do them in smaller cars, and we do a distribution, we come back, and we move back and forth in that way. And then you see here is a truck that IDF gets in. So alhamdulillah, we've been able to get all of our products in, be it hygiene items, be it food items, be it fuel that we get in. We get in a lot of goods into Gaza, and alhamdulillah, we have no challenges with that. And that is only because we as an org have been doing this work for so long there on the ground. We have a lot of relationships there at the border point. We're very clear with anyone who asks any questions around the work that we're doing. And every single food item that you see on that, so about 5,000, 6,000 boxes at times that we can load up on a truck, has to be reviewed and has to be stamped by the UN. UN UNRWA has to review everything and give a stamp of approval, and that's when it's brought over the border point. So when it was the Qurbani that we did distributions of, it was the same kind of process to ensure that all of the food and anything that we get in is reviewed and it's checked. Here's a quick photo of what our fresh food distributions look like. So this is where we do all of our packaging. We set up here, so this is a big, large-scale potato setup, and what we'll do essentially is we'll try to give families large bags of potatoes, and then they'll go ahead and be able to utilize that in a variety of different ways that they can. And we do these setups, and we have these setups throughout the Gaza Strip, right? Thankfully, none of these have been attacked or none of these have been damaged, and it allows us to continue to do the work that we're doing, but of course, there are risks associated with any of these kinds of services. Some may have seen that IDF has had previous programs and previous things damaged, and that's just a risk that we continue to take on the ground because our staff ensure that we're trying to support as many people as possible. Then here's another photo of some of the different fresh food that we've been giving out. This is a distribution that we did. This is more so in Ramadan, but you can see just a variety of the different fresh fruits and vegetables that we give. Some people don't understand why we do this, why we give out fresh fruits and vegetables when people are starving and when people are just in need of something to eat. The reason why we do this is because this conflict has been going on for 10 months. When a conflict happens for over 10 months and everyone's just dependent on non-perishable foods, canned foods, dry foods, their diet is severely affected. You also have over 50,000 women that were pregnant as well, so that what they need is a lot more nutrition into their diet as well. You're talking about children that are in need across the board, the elderly that are in need, so having a more balanced and healthy diet is what is essential. So we as an organization try to prioritize that as much as possible, recognizing that this conflict is nowhere near the end. So how do you ensure that people aren't just going to be dependent on dry food rations, but also can have some fresh food in their diet as well? And then again, here's just some photos of some of our distributions. So we go to people in everywhere that they are, right? So obviously, we've been told over the last 9 months, move south, move south, move south, moving from Khan Yunis all the way to Rafah. Rafah back to Khan Yunis, back to Rafah, back up north. So people have been moved all across the Gaza Strip, but our operations haven't stopped anywhere for those in the north. There are over 500,000 people that are north of Karbala area. Right? So there's a huge number of people that are in need, and those are oftentimes the elderly, children that are unaccompanied, that don't have their parents, don't have any extended family members, so they're alone there, and they're in need of food, they're in need of things to eat. So we try to ensure that we target them and provide them with as much support as possible while they're there. The second area is around the work that we do in water, sanitation, hygiene. So this is an area where we as an org have a lot of experience, and we've been doing a lot of work. Prior to October, IDRF was managing 29 schools on a daily basis having access to clean drinking water. We used to have a water desalination plant that we do distributions from. We purchased multiple water tankers that we did distributions from. We built over 25 water wells. So prior to October, we were really positioned as an organization to really understand how the water ecosystem is working and how that's going to be navigated. Unfortunately, since then, the water tanker that you see in the top left corner there has been bombed, severely damaged. It's completely can no longer be used. Alhamdulillah, we've been able to navigate that, and we were able to rent out another water tanker. A lot of the water wells that we built have all been damaged, severely damaged. There's a few of them that are operational at this moment where we've established the solar plants on. But again, anytime there's large congregations of people, anytime, even the size of this room, it's an area that can be targeted. And we've also used to do a large-scale water irrigation system for farmers. So our water programs are quite significant. Since then, we've been doing a lot of work, right? So on a daily basis, we do distributions of water for 100,000 people. So 100,000 people have access to clean drinking water through IDRF. We do distributions of 250,000 liters of water every single day. And that's the minimum amount of water that we do distributions from. The large water plant that we work with, this is based in Rafah. We now have established a new large-scale water desalination plant that's based in Khan Yunis. We have another one that is in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. So we have a lot of large-scale water distribution programs. So 100,000 people, no matter what it is, have access to our water. What we'd like to do is we'd like to meet the standards. They're the humanitarian standards that require a minimum of 15 liters per person per day. Unfortunately, we can't meet that because there isn't enough water to go around to meet as many people's needs for that. And the reason why that standard exists, it's 5 liters for drinking, 5 liters for cleaning, and 5 liters for any hygiene purposes or any of the other purposes you'd like to cook with. So we can't unfortunately do that. So what we've been able to do is give everyone a jerry can that gives them anywhere from about 5 to 7 liters a day, and they can use that for whatever purpose that they'd like. We'd like to, of course, increase the water outputs that we're giving, but we want to really reach as many people as possible having access to clean drinking water. So some of the photos you see here it's the way we do our distributions. People can come up, go to the water desalination plant, they can have their water tanks filled and their jerry cans filled, and then they take them back to their tents. The other way that we do our distributions is we also have our trucks that then do their distributions to people into the communities that they're in. There's oftentimes the elderly that we work with, some of the children that are alone, or families that maybe have another healthcare issue that don't have a choice to come to the water desalination plant. So we to then deliver water to them. So what that looks like is here, these are people that have all lived within this camp. This is a camp that's in Rafah, and they come over, they get their access to clean drinking water, they go back to their tents, and those who aren't able to make it, our team then does the distributions to them. What you see here, these large white buckets here, these large white tanks, these are where we hold the water in. So our truck comes and it fills these water points in. We do our distributions now twice a day. We do them during the day, and then we also do it at night. So people have water into the evening and early mornings before we come back for the afternoon. So we do water distributions twice a day for as many communities as we can. And then we continue to do those distributions on a regular basis. And those who have access and can travel over to the larger point, they can fill up as much water as possible that we have available to them that day. Again, though, this is all dependent on fuel. And I'll get into that a little later on, and you'll start to understand the interdependencies here with all of the different sectors. But as much water we can distribute can only come down to as much fuel as we have to run our water desalination plant and to fuel up the trucks to do a distribution. So that same fuel is also needed to fuel the hot meals that we're doing distributions for, and also the bread, right? So we have to oftentimes triage how we are going to either give people some clean drinking water or some food, which is a really tough decision to make. Here's the distributions that we do in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. These are people that are still there. Oftentimes those who are in the southern part of the Strip, those who are in Khan Yunis, those who are in Rafah, those are the ones that live within tents, right? Those are the ones that organizations from around the world can give a tent to, and they can get some level of humanitarian service. Those who are northern part of Gaza Strip, they have access to nothing. These are people that are not a part of daily food distribution programs. These are people that are not a part of clean drinking water. These are people that don't have access to healthcare services. And oftentimes the ones that are up here are children. They're children that are afraid. They have no parents. They have no siblings. They have no one. They're alone there. They're afraid, and they have no access to anything else. And the only thing that they're staying in the ruins of their old homes. As they stay in these ruins, these are the places which we try to go out and try to give them services, whether we try to give them food, whether we try to give them clean drinking water. So this is where we do the distributions of that clean drinking water for them. The challenge, though, is anyone who's still in this area is in an active zone where they can, of course, be targeted. doesn't mean that those in the south can't be targeted, but those in the north, it's even more indiscriminate, and at times you'll just see a distribution point that gets completely obliterated, and you see 8 or 9 people that are killed there, and they're all 8, 9, 10-year-old children. So we try to be as careful as possible. We try to share where we're doing our work and our coordinates, but again, this is where we do some of the distributions for that. And here you see again another photo of the children. They can go ahead and they take it. And everyone in the photos you can see for the most part are children, all unaccompanied minors, no parents, no nothing, and they have access to clean drinking water. So what we do for them is we'll give them access to clean drinking water one day. Later that afternoon we'll give them a hot meal, and then we'll do distributions of that sort. That's the maximum that we can do. If any of them are willing to come and travel down south where we've established tents and we have programs like that, we do that. Otherwise, they stay in the northern part of the area. Under our area of water and sanitation falls hygiene. So when it comes to hygiene items, we know that, as a Muslim community, as Muslim people, staying hygienic and staying clean is extremely important. And we want to ensure that we still meet those requirements. So what we do is we do distributions on a regular basis of hygiene items. And these are the basics that people need. You're talking about female pads, you're talking about Pampers for children, you're talking about hand sanitizer, shampoo, conditioner, things to cut their nails, toothbrush, toothpaste, all of these things that are important, because this is where oftentimes a lot of diseases can come from, and if you're not keeping yourself hygienic at times, right? You're talking about people that have barely access to any clean drinking water and have no ways of really cleaning themselves. So if they don't have any of these things, it can lead to additional diseases, especially at times of heavy rain, where there's a lot more waterborne illnesses that do come. So we do distributions of hygiene items, we bring those in through the Egyptian border point, and we do distributions on a regular basis for that. And then we also have adopted a few schools. We've worked with UN UNRWA now for several months, where we've adopted their schools. UN UNRWA plays the role of keeping the school and managing the overall school. We as IDF play the role of giving people access to food, hygiene items, clean drinking water at those schools. And oftentimes those who are living in the schools are children. So it's unfortunate because these large-scale schools that have gone from being, places of education have now become shelters for people. So these schools that have gone from large-scale spaces that were there for learning have now become places for shelter, right? Desks are used as beds, and the whole situation is completely changed. So what we're trying to do as an org is not only provide them with those services at those schools, but think through how we can even provide some basic level of education, because we know 10 months of not having any level of education for children can be very detrimental. So I'll get into that in the next few slides, but those are one of the things that we additionally do as well. What you see here is our toilet program. Again, one of the large challenges is people living in Rafah. Rafah was never a space where people would come to and live large scale. You're looking at over 2 million people that had to move down there. That was never the case. That's more of a beachy area. That has now had to turn primarily to large scale cemeteries for those who have passed away. A lot of that area has turned to cemeteries. And the other half of it used to be agricultural land. That is where farmers used to grow their produce. That is where a lot of the crops and the things that you see, that the beautiful produce that comes out of Gaza used to all come from Rafah. Now that is an area where you now have brought close to 2 million people to. And with that comes a need for a lot more sanitation facilities. This has never been a space that was facilitated for that. So what we've done is we've established toilets across there. We've built toilets in the dozens, and that's what we maintain. We've installed all the septic tanks for them, and we do all the cleaning of those toilets. And people are able to use that, and they're established within their tents. Because the tents are there, they have nowhere to use, and open defecation and whatnot can lead to additional challenges when there rains, and those waters get into people's homes. So it's another larger issue that we had to be very worried and concerned about, because there was large-scale waterborne illnesses and diseases that we're having outbreaks for. In the area of healthcare, this has been an area that oftentimes isn't the focus for people when it comes to the needs right now during this crisis, but it is an area that there is significant ways in which we as an organization have been supporting. So the photos you see on the left, the ones on the top, were actually the ICU units that IDF previously established. Those were during the height of the pandemic. We were providing oxygen to over 16 hospitals. We were providing as much healthcare services to people as possible. Unfortunately, a lot of that is no longer operational. They've either been bombed, they've been targeted intentionally, and people are just not getting the healthcare services that they need. So what we've been able to do as an org is pivot into providing mobile medical support services and setting up mobile clinics And those clinics are actually registered and set up in the Rafah area and in Khan Yunis, and they provide as much support to people as possible. So not only are we providing services in that area, we've done distributions of medical supplies, we've been training doctors and providing support to doctors, and I'll get into all of that in a second. So what you see here is actually the distributions that we've been doing of the medical supplies. So we do distributions of medical supplies on a daily basis, and that distribution of items is any of the different consumables, some of the different medications that's in need, and we do those distributions, we do a drop-off of that, and then it goes to families that are in need, and then the doctors are able to utilize that. Doctors oftentimes let us know what services they need and what supplies they'd like us to bring in, and we try to bring in as much services as we possibly can. Here's a photo of a few doctors that we've been supporting. So the interesting part of these doctors is, so 4 years ago, we actually started a medical training program where we identify high-achieving students that actually needed support, financial support, to go through medical school and become doctors. So unfortunately, in the last year of their studies of becoming a medical doctor, this war broke out. And the photos you see here is one of them. His name is Yunus. And Yunus was a doctor who's in final year of his medical studies. And he had no choice but to stop his studies, and he was thrown right into the deep end as a doctor's assistant. He's been providing services, and at times he's actually doing things that are above his skill set at this time, but he has no choice. A lot of the doctors that were experts, that were leaders in some of their different areas, a lot of them have been killed or are no longer able to work. So there's a need for a lot more practitioners, which is why we as an org have worked to help bring a lot of doctors from Canada, from the UK over to Gaza to provide medical support services, because there's a real need for doctors and professionals providing healthcare services. But this photo just shows a student who's a student trying to become a doctor who's thrown right into the deep end and had to provide medical services right off the bat. Here's a photo of the medical clinic that we recently established. We're working with an organization called Médecins du Monde. Médecins du Monde is actually based from Montreal, and they're an organization that provides medical support services. So the way that we've actually partnered together is we as IDRF have built the clinic, we've established it, we provide all the medical supplies and everything, and Médecins du Monde has brought in their doctors, and they've brought in the nurses to provide the actual medical support services. We cover all the costs for them to ensure that these doctors and these nurses can provide their services, and it ensures that we can maximize our impact. We've established now 2 of these medical clinics. Both of them are now located in Khan Yunis at the moment, and they provide services. And at any given day, we have about 5,500 patients that come to the door that need support services. So you can only imagine how long that line is. And we're trying to triage who needs support services. Is it the expecting mother that comes in? Is it the elderly person that's there? Is it a child that comes to the door? Is it someone who's just been wounded through a bombing that happens? So there's so much that comes to our doorstep. So we actually had to establish a second clinic, and even with the second clinic, we had to then help refer people to another hospital that we've now recently adopted that provides medical support services. So it just goes to show the challenges there. Again, this clinic can only operate based on the fuel that we can get, because we need that fuel for some of the electricity and to kind of keep things going. So another thing that's dependent on fuel to keep your services going. Alhamdulillah, we've had no challenges to date. These are fairly newer programs that we established over the last 2 months, but they are making large-scale impacts. And this is what the inside of the clinic looks like. So you have your doctors, you have your medicines that you can provide, and any of the services that they need, and we do those, and anyone can come for any of the services that they'd like. And again, some additional distributions of medical supplies that we've been doing. So there's a hospital called the Haifa Charitable Hospital that we've been supporting. So to the left there, where you see that ambulance area there, that used to actually, in that area, they used to set an oxygen plant. One of the oxygen plants that we purchased many years ago, that was actually bombed. That oxygen plant would help keep an ICU unit going, that would have the ventilators going or anything, but anyone who need actual serious medical support services can no longer operate that. So unfortunately, this hospital was closed for many months. The reason why it was closed is because it literally had basic services that it could provide. It just didn't have the power to keep it going because it needed fuel to keep the generators going. So the hospital was just vacated in that way. More recently, over the last 3 months, we've been providing this hospital with the fuel that it needs. So not only is the hospital now back operational, now we can actually refer people from the clinics to the hospital that need more surgeries or additional support services. So our healthcare services has to be robust in this way. Otherwise, the challenges are just too great because there's only a few remaining hospitals across the Gaza Strip at this time. Our support for women and children is always a focus for our organization. It's a part of our organization strategy, and it's always a piece that we try to prioritize. So whether it's any kind of service for them, those are the ones that we always actually put at the forefront of needs, given the challenges that they often face. So what you see here is actually some of the photos that we have from our psychosocial program. Our psychosocial program, and why we think it's important, is because, you know, children have lost not only their parents, they're talking about their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles. They have no surviving family members. There's actually acronyms that they've come up with to describe these children, because this is the first of its kind where children have no surviving family, no one else. And they've been writing their names, their extended family names on their arms and on their legs, just so in the event where they're killed, somebody knows who they are or what to put on a tombstone for them in the event where somebody were to one day try to identify that this was my child, right? Even our own staff member, Mohammed, who works for us there, he was away from his children for 9 months, and he had no idea whether they were alive or weren't alive, right? So that's the severity of what these children are dealing with. So some of the things that we do for children is provide them with psychosocial support, and we do that in a variety of different ways. Some of them is just play days. So whether it be the different Eids that we went through, providing them with some fun and toys and games that they can play, providing them with ways that they can color, or providing them with one-on-one counseling and having conversations with them, because at times that allows them to have a smile on their face in that moment, because before that they won't eat anything, right? When you go to these children and you're talking to them and you're trying to have a conversation with them and provide them with food or water, they won't take a lot of the food and water you're giving. They're going through so many of these other challenges. So when we do have a sit down with them, we provide them with some level of counseling, we try to make them smile in some way. Only then will they say, okay, I'll have something to eat. And that allows us to then give them something to eat or give them some water, and then we start to see how we can provide additional support to them. So the photos you see here are some of the things that we've done for some of the children. You can see there's ruins behind them, because that's where they're living. You know, you literally you find them, you go to some of these old homes, these old buildings, you walk into the building, and then that's where you'll see a child that's just sitting there on his own, just sitting there with either a sibling or on their own. So we provide them with the little things that we can, be it toys, play days, things to help them smile. This is some artwork that they've actually been doing, and they started to draw. Like, for instance, he's drawing his home where his old house used to be, right? Which is extremely sad, just to think about the fact that he has to draw his home on the ruins of his old house. Again, you know, just them just having an opportunity to smile, and even whether it's remembering some of their children, their life, what it was like prior to this war happening to them, but it allows them to have some level of that psychosocial support. The other thing that we've done is provide them with basic education that we could do. So we know that, again, 9 months, 10 months of not having any schooling has made it very challenging. So what we do is basic education that we can. Those who were in primary school, you know, grade 1, grade 2, or kindergarten, those are the ones in which we're trying to give them basic level of education that we can. And we know we can do that in a very easy way. We can do that through different games, and we can do that in those ways. The ones that we're really concerned about and worried about now are those who are the adolescents, who've now been out of school for a full year and have to deal with the trauma and the mental challenges that they've dealt with over the last year. That's a real concern for us that we're looking at. Obviously, there's very little that we can do for them at this time, but we're trying to provide them with as much support as we possibly can, but that remains a key challenge in the area of support. So that kind of brings me to the end of the work that we're doing in Gaza. The needs are great. There's millions of people that are in need across the board, but there are things we can do, right? At times you will feel helpless, you will feel hopeless around what we can do, but there are things that we can do, and there's ways in which we can provide as much services as possible, be it in the area of food, water, healthcare, psychosocial programming, education. There's a lot that we can do, right? So I wanted to kind of leave that with you all to let you know that we can do things. There's organizations like IDRF that are doing great work, that are there on the ground. And the people there are in need of support. The children are in need of support, the families are in need of support. So it's our duty to ensure that we're there, providing them with as much services as possible. And we have to think through ways in which we do that. And alhamdulillah, we've had no challenges as an organization getting our money to Gaza. We've had no challenges from an impact perspective. And as the needs continue to evolve over the months to come, we'll be there to try to provide as much services as possible. So I'll end my presentation there, and happy to field any questions or listen to any comments anyone may have.